Just another 5 days and the world shall witness one of this year's and hopefully the decade's grandest ceremonies as United Kingdom gets their new monarch, King Charles III. No stone is being left unturned to ensure the success of this huge event. Novelty will be seen in abundance when it comes to the ceremony, which has been themed on togetherness and inclusivity. In the latest updates from the Coronation Diaries, we get you a glimpse at an array of historic chairs that shall be used in the ceremony. Those have been part of the royal chair collection as they were used for the coronation of the previous monarchs, which over centuries have been conserved and restored timely. If we move our focus to the ceremony itself, there are several historic events that are lined up. One such is the involvement of the Prime Minister of United Kingdom, Rishi Sunak. For the first time in the history of coronation traditions being upheld, a practicing Hindu shall be playing a crucial role in the Christian ceremony. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak shall be reading out an epistle that is selected by the Archbishop of Canterbury. In addition to female bishops shall also be taking part in this ceremony. A new era for the monarch indeed. Before we go back to Sanjay has already filed a few interesting reports for us. Windsor has been witnessing a big build-up for the big day, as that has been home to the royals for centuries now. Sanjay Suri with this report.
If there is a town in Britain that looks all decked up for the coronation, it is here, Windsor. As it would, it's a town that lives around Windsor Castle, which has been home to the royal family for centuries. They are the House of Windsors. You would think on the streets here that there is something to wait for and to look forward to. The welcome at the railway station is just the start, and this is the way just about everyone will get to Windsor. Its parking lots are already closed in anticipation of the rush underway, with more to come. The railway station leaves you in no doubt what the town will offer. Not least its pubs. There is no British celebration that does not begin and often end at the pub. This one is historic. Union Jacks and coronation flags mark the streets all the way up to Windsor Castle, always a huge attraction for tourists from around the world. These days, the shops along these streets are offering all the Charles they can to cash in on the coronation, not always very successfully. More seems on offer by way of the coronation than there are takers for.
The coronation, it's not going to change anything. People are going to come and buy some flags. And the streets will be lined up with people. And everyone, all the coffee shops and sandwich shops will be very busy. I won't be busy.
Are you busy already?
No.
He thinks inflation is hitting his sales too.
Everything is expensive. Not cheap. Sab kuch sasta, no महंगा.
It's not just the souvenir shops that have the coronation on display. The icons of Britain's high streets seem to have agreed to promote the coronation flavour. The W.H. Smith store here, Boots presents the king its own way, and Marks and Spencer would of course be excited. Tourists seem less than excited, perhaps just mildly interested.
We are interested in the coronation, but we're here on a cruise, and so we took the opportunity to come to Windsor to see the decorations and what is in Windsor. It's actually quite something.
Among many, it's still the late Queen that's popular. Very many more pose with an image of her than with any of King Charles. The shops are pushing the coronation. Just about everyone in Windsor is, the managers, the authorities, you name it. But in Windsor, as in London, enthusiasm among people seems at the least less than what you might expect.
And Sanjay continues to be with us. Sanjay, taking a cue from what you said in the final words of your report, that everybody is trying to make this a huge success, but where do you get the enthusiasm as far as the citizens or even tourists are concerned? You spoke to many of them. I didn't see anybody jumping out and really saying that, yes, I'm going to be outside Buckingham Palace and I'm really excited. That enthusiasm is really missing.
Well, it might be a cheat to say this, but we did have a lot of people expressing their view, and that was quite the opposite of that. People said that they don't want this coronation. A lot of people said it. They simply didn't want to say this on camera. And of course, they couldn't get themselves to express enthusiasm that they do not feel. And the reason I say this is a cheat is because it's sort of asking you perhaps unfairly to take my word for it. And needless to say, you don't have to. But very few people are prepared to say that they are excited. A lot of people say they are a little fed up with this. They are in fact beginning to show a level of annoyance. Now, for example, there was a good deal of annoyance expressed over this demand or this suggestion from the palace that people should swear allegiance to the king. This, someone said to me, was like something out of Game of Thrones, like bending the knee. And this is completely out of place in today's environment. You could have a coronation, but it could have been a low-key affair, not, old chairs being summoned and all sorts of exaggerated, really, efforts being put into it at exaggerated cost, needless to say.
Yeah.
And therefore, people believe that this is turning out to be far too expensive and far too fussy.
And Sanjay, we've been discussing this all week, that this, lack of enthusiasm, people wanting to do away with the royalty. All of this leads to the monetary cost that is attached with anything that the royals do. And especially for the United Kingdom, inflation is an all-time high. People are not sure of putting 3 meals a day. And thus the question is, why should the taxpayers be paying for what the royals are doing? Is this possibly a very big sign of times to come as well?
Certainly, there is a huge concern over the cost. The earlier estimate was £100 million. The new estimate is £250 million. That's a quarter of £1 billion. When people are struggling, when you have nurses on strike as we speak, and that includes cancer care nurses for the first time, they simply can't make ends meet. It takes an extreme situation to get cancer nurses to go on strike, and they are doing this right now. There is a real difficulty with living. Everybody has been on strike. Train drivers, teachers, you name it, people have been striking everywhere because they are struggling. And in the midst of all that, you have this huge and hugely expensive coronation, and the defense being offered now on behalf of the palace is quite extraordinary as well. We are told that £125 million will be spent on the coronation weekend on people drinking beer. People estimate that 62 million pints of beer will be drunk, that therefore this is going to boost the economy and it's going to promote sales. So there is money being generated rather than money being spent. A quite bizarre argument, completely forgetting the loss of the day's work due to the holiday. This is the kind of PR work being launched on behalf of the palace to try and fix the narrative. And of course, we were speaking of narratives earlier. Narratives are so overwhelmingly important in just about everything in political life. And therefore, this is now an area where there is a conflicting narrative of its kind here as well. The palace putting out its narrative that is beginning quite clearly to weaken in the face of a lot of public criticism and their own narrative turning against the royalty.
Sanjay, lastly, I want to understand, whatever said and done, the coronation will happen. The palace will try and make this a huge success and will ensure that it's picked up on as many platforms as possible. This entire theme of making it more inclusive, there are a lot of firsts that we're going to see this time around as well. For example, the role of the UK Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, a practicing Hindu, the involvement of female Archbishop. Talk to us about the kind of firsts that we'll see this time around.
Well, that certainly the palace is getting right and is doing very well to get right. And to give due credit to King Charles, he is personally making sure that this will be a broadly inclusive ceremony. The ceremony itself, of course, will be very grand. The British do these things rather well. It will be a very calibrated, choreographed event, and the timing and the spectacle will be grand. It will be like nothing else. This time the difference is that it will be inclusive. People from all different backgrounds are a part of this. We have about 15% of the population of Britain now that is minority or minority origin. That will be reflected in the royal event, and to that extent the palace has done very well, starting from an epistle being read out by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to various other ceremonies. For example, if you have the final ceremony before the procession begins from Westminster Abbey, you will have people of all faiths getting together and sharing in offering a blessing to the king and to the queen consort. So this is now that will include Hindus, Sikhs, Muslims, Buddhists, you name it, and therefore this kind of inclusivity certainly is very progressive and must be welcomed.